goodness, anybody's game at the moment.
Well, it is, and Nigel Owen not really given much time to advantages there. And anyway, Ireland have come.
O'Gara, he's obviously the student has been paying attention.
All the people who are here from the IFP, from the DA, and from the African National Congress, who have come to support their leaders who will be debating the issues with us this evening. Now, you will wonder why we have chosen these three parties. Well, in the last election, even though a lot has happened in between, floor crossing and a lot of by-elections, some have lost some, won some, and so on. But the reason we've brought these three election parties is that in the last election, the ANC got, I think, in the region of 200 municipalities, whereas the DA got about 7, and the IFP got about 25. And as I said, a lot happened in between, and now we're talking a completely different set of numbers. Now, let me first introduce to you our panel. From the ANC, we have Mr. Gwede Mandashe, who's the Secretary General of the ANC. Welcome to you, sir.
Thank you very much.
And next to Mr. Mandashe is the DA's national spokesperson, Ms. Lindiwe Mazibuko. Welcome, ma'am.
Thanks very much.
And from the IFP, we've got Mr. Bonginkosi Dlamini. Welcome to you too, sir. Now, before we get on to the issues, I'd like to give each party an opportunity to make some opening remarks. Now, the way we're going to do it, we'll give each party a minute and 30 seconds. 1 minute, 30 seconds, there's going to be a clock there. If you run over, we're going to cut you off. Now, Professor Adam Habib, who is our partner and who is also the Deputy Vice Chancellor of the University of Johannesburg, is going to make sense of some of the things that the political parties will be saying. I'd like to say welcome to you too, sir.
Thank you.
Let's start with you. Let's start with you, Mr. Mandashe. Past 5 years, 200 councils. What can you say about your delivery record?
Yeah, the first thing that everybody must understand about the African National Congress is that its track record will never be judged in terms of what it does in the top end of society or in elitist areas. It is judged in terms of the impact it is making on the most vulnerable at the bottom end of society. That's why all the time it will always deal with questions of people demanding more service. And over the last 5 years, we've dealt with many of the basic needs. Majority of our people today, we can boast of having access to water, electricity, sanitation, including in the rural areas, because if you are in the flashes of Johannesburg, you will never see the real impact of transformation. But if you go out in the outer land, you really begin to see the change of the face of the country. And over the last 5 years, you have seen people demanding more and more service delivery. In the majority of cases, where they were more vocal is where service delivery was happening. And therefore, I call it the pull effect of service delivery. But the strength of the ANC over any other party is that when there are those protests, the ANC goes physically and engages those communities, talk to them, understand the problem, address them. And the progress we've made over there, we're happy. When we launched our manifesto today, we said we'll continue from where we stopped.
Thank you very much. Now, the Democratic Alliance.
Well, we in the Democratic Alliance believe in delivering to everybody, not just the rich, not just the poor, but to everybody. And that's the approach that we've taken since we took up the municipalities we did in the last election. Our record in the city of Cape Town is very well known, but I think what many people don't know is that we have municipalities, well, we have a municipality in Gauteng and another one in the Eastern Cape, Bavians. And if you talk about rural delivery, Bavians is a largely rural municipality, which we have been governing for 5 years since the last election. And as a consequence, the service delivery that we have rolled out there has been a massive improvement on the previous administration. And all of the indexes that measure service delivery, particularly with regard to free access to basic services, have rated DA municipalities in the top 50. They include municipalities like Bavians, like the city of Cape Town, and like Midvaal here in Gauteng. So we believe very strongly that delivery must occur to all. We don't believe, for example, that so-called elites in cities don't deserve good services because they are privileged. Everybody deserves services. But yes, the poor deserve more government intervention, and that is the focus of our policies. But we mustn't forget that in order to build competitive cities that will attract investment and create jobs, we have to have an urban mechanism that is functional with delivery that will attract businesses, that will create jobs and increase the number of people who reside in those elites. That's our approach.
Thank you very much. Can we now hear it? Can we now hear it from the IFP?
Thank you, Vuyo. Yes, of the 32 municipalities that we run in KZN, as Secretary General of the ANC said, it's deep rural areas where there was absolutely nothing, and you know that they don't have a tax base. And most of the services that are needed by those communities, your water, electricity, are also national competences. But we have made a big difference in those municipalities. That is why even your legal parties which are being formed yesterday are claiming that victory, where we're able as IFP to deal with the legal we have in the fixed costs and the legal we have in terms of your competences of providing water, electricity and roads. And also we even went beyond our mandate of also giving schools. Like for instance in Utungulu and Zululand, we have built more than 300 classrooms. Therefore we are giving service to our people. We are also providing their needs that are needed in rural areas which are taken for advantage in cities. Therefore the IFP has been able to do under those circumstances. Secondly, we have also been able as the IFP to deal with corruption and lazy leaders which we have deployed as a party. Mayors who got disclaimers and so forth, who are lazy, who lack leadership. We have dealt with them. We have not been beat about the bush about those issues. We're able to deal decisively and chase them away and put people to be able to use taxpayers' money for the benefit of the poor.
Well, well, that of course is the view of the leadership, and we are now going to listen to what the people of South Africa had to say about the delivery record of these political parties. Let's listen.
Government akazisi i-services zonke ebantwini. Okokuqala indlela zikho right. Umbani, amanzi, and abanye abantu most abantu abana ndawo zohlala.
Kunemizi la engenayo ugesi, especially la emizi emjondolo yabona indaba. Laphana futhi abantu abanakiwe isikhathi esiningi abantu abaningi lapha nabona indaba.
Kamola futhi fiscal ngolesana bakadlela futhi toilet. Abadidi bayithusha kwanageng kwa.
From the past experiences, it wasn't too good. You have to actually go an extra effort to get them to do stuff for you.
Professor Habib, you heard what the political leaders had to say. You listened to what the people there had to say. Where do you think lies this discrepancy?
Well, I think that there's discrepancy in all of what has been said, and I want to pose a couple of questions to the colleagues there. It seems to me that the ANC has to confront the question, both in the research of the ANC and the state. They say that delivery is hampered by the fact that there isn't sufficient capacity in municipalities and because of corruption. The problem of there not being significant capacity in municipalities, why is it that people who still have good qualifications, who are well trained, cannot get jobs? It seems to me that we have a set of civil service warlords, if you like, who control the appointment process at municipalities. And even though the president has said that the deployment into the municipalities is going to be based on merit, that still doesn't happen in large parts of the country. And the big question is, what are we going to do that is different? On corruption, it seems to me, the research shows there's been significant corruption in municipalities. And we can have the best rules in the world. But if we don't act against corrupt people, then there's going to be serious questions. So, for instance, even this week, the billing crisis in Johannesburg, the newspapers report that the company that lost the contract was asked for bribes by officials. What has happened? Why hasn't anybody lost their job? But as much as there are questions with the ANC around efficiency, it seems to me that there are questions about the DA. And the big question that the DA has to answer is, are you responsive to the poor? The city of Cape Town, the example you use, the delivery record that you use, had a saga there where you had open air toilets built. Your officials in this municipality this week said they still do not believe they did anything wrong. Would you use a toilet with a view? And it seems to me that that's an important question, because what it does pose for people around the country is the DA responsive to the interests of poor people? For the IFP, the question is, Mrs. Dlamini, your party has lost elections, has lost voting in every election since 1994. In every single election since 1994, you've consistently lost votes. Why should citizens vote for you in 2011 when they've been abandoning you for the last 15 years?
Thank you very much, Prof. Now we're going to go for a quick commercial break, after which we get the parties to respond to the specific issues that Professor Habib has raised, as well as other issues as we debate election 2011. Don't go away.
No matter where they are, we'll always be behind our boys. It all comes together with a castle.
Know the law. Question 9. A white taxi has a head-on collision with a red passenger vehicle in the middle of a busy intersection. Nobody is seriously injured, but both vehicles are damaged. When it comes to legal claims, which party will win? The taxi or the car? The winner will be the one with a better lawyer. Superior legal services from Clientele Legal. Better lawyers, better advice.
Hi, Ma. Can you please watch the food? I have to quickly fetch the kids.
Okay, ma, good. That meat smells nice. Now, where is it?
Everything okay?
Yes, my girl. But I can't find the meat.
It's right here.
It's no rocks. Even without meat, your stew is as meaty as ever.
If you or a family member were to pass away right now, is there enough money for the funeral? At Hollard, we get you. That's why we now cover you and your partner for up to 50,000 Rand for burial expenses. And to make arranging the funeral easier, we now offer you access to a car for up to 6 days. You also have the option of your family receiving up to 1,200 Rand a month for a year after the funeral. Lastly, we offer you up to 10,000 Rand to erect a tombstone as a remembrance. SMS your name to 41299 or call 0800 151515. Terms and conditions apply. Hollard is an authorized financial services provider licensed to sell insurance products.
Political unrest, a priceless diamond, and a man looking for peace. Get it all in Blood Diamond. Sunday, 27th February at 8. Msansi for sure.
Welcome back to our first debate on elections that are coming up in a few months' time. Now, with us is the African National Congress, the Democratic Alliance, as well as the IFP. Now, Before we went to the break, Mr. Mandashe, you had Professor Habib posing questions. Capacity, corruption, maladministration. These are issues that the ANC has in fact been talking about. But perhaps the question is, why are they not being addressed?
Let me start with the question of capacity. It's not a problem facing local government. The skills shortage is a national problem. You can go to any sector, you'll find that as a problem. The plus that must be given to the ANC is that giving black people who were previously excluded from operational exposure because of the scheduled person provision historically have been given that operational exposure now. And therefore, you're not talking of the same pool of skilled people as you talked about in 1974. There's a bigger pool, and that pool continues to grow. But you are not going to get instant solution to capacity issues. That's why one of the campaigns that we've been driving as the ANC was appoint appropriately skilled people to positions. If you want to appoint a technical director, don't appoint a person because a graduate engineer. Appoint a registered engineer, because when you are a technical director, you have a responsibility of ensuring that that infrastructure is rolled out, and at the same time, you have the responsibility of overseeing young graduates from graduation to registration. So that theme is in our program. If we don't have enough registered engineers, we'll have to work on that and improvise in some instances. But that capacity is there. That's why if you look into the program that was assigned to the Development Bank of Southern Africa, called Sienza Manje, that program focused on one thing only: recruiting retired engineers, deploy them to municipalities. It has done a lot of improvement in terms of the capacity of a number of municipalities. It has not resolved the problem absolutely.
But then, Mr. Mandashe, if you look at what the president had to say when we interviewed him a week ago, if you look at what the Salga report says, if you look at what the municipalities themselves, after reports and reports of the Auditor General, a lot of the things that seem to be problematic have got very little to do with capacity. They in fact have a lot to do with people not doing their job. In other words, people who are employed to do certain jobs, who are capable of doing those jobs, but who simply aren't doing them.
Yes. You're posing a third question, which is a new question. I was answering the question posed by Professor Habib of capacity. And that's what I was doing. But in that regard, the question of lazy people, people are not doing their work, that is the responsibility of the institution. You can talk about it at national level as much as we like, but management in each municipality must be tight enough to drive the performance of every individual. Let me go to the question of corruption. I have a very strong view in terms of corruption. I think the only way you can deal with corruption is not to allege it generally, is to arrest, prosecute, and convict a person who's accused of corruption. The weakness in South Africa, the term corruption is generalized so much that it is beginning to lose meaning. It must not be generalized. Where there is a case of corruption, it must be pointed out. The institutions that are charged with the responsibility of dealing with corruption must arrest, prosecute, and convict those people. Let me talk to the billing system. It's like a person who is competing for a tender, loses it, keeps quiet. When there is a crisis a year later, say the last year when that tender was awarded, I was asked for a bribe. I think that person is disingenuous, is dishonest, and is actually misleading the country. Because if you are excluded from a tender because you are asked for a bribe, you put that immediately so that it becomes an issue in terms of that particular tender. And therefore, and I want to conclude by talking about Joburg. Everybody, all of us, are sees Joburg as a city of the billing crisis, and ignore the fact that it's one of the best performing cities in the country. If you go to Soweto, go and see the facelift of that biggest township of Africans in the country, and you can compare it to any city. In Cape Town, Cape Town is well run up to N2 Gateway. Beyond N2 Gateway, you face poverty directly.
Now, the DA, we will get to some of the issues that the parties have raised about each other. But let's give you an opportunity to respond to some of the issues that Professor Habib has
Professor
raised.
Habib's question was, is the DA responsive to the needs of the poor? And in fact, the story of Makaza is the story of the DA doing exactly that. You know, but maybe the audience doesn't know, that the national standard for upgrading informal settlements in situ is to have one toilet for 5 families. We installed those toilets, they were all walled, and those were the toilets that were given to us out of the national budget from the national government. In addition to that, we undertook, through a consultation with the community, which was springboarded by the community, to give an additional allocation so that each family would have one toilet instead of having to share and walk longer distance in order to get to them. Those were the toilets that were not walled. And the agreement was that we would build them, we would do all the sewage works and all the laying of pipes, which costs a lot of money, and in exchange the community would build the walls. Nobody in that community was compelled to use a toilet without a wall. I'm going to say it again. Nobody in that community was compelled to use a toilet without a wall. There were walled toilets which were part of the national standard in those communities, but we wanted to do more. There was the unintended consequences that some people, A, couldn't wall those toilets, which we tried to rectify by putting up corrugated iron structures, which were then torn down by the very youth league that brought this issue up, and then took us to court because they tore them down. We tried again to go back into the community and find a way not to insult the hard work of the people who had put up walls. 95% of 1,500 people who had put up their own walls in compliance with the agreement that they had made. We didn't want to punish them by giving the others a service which they weren't able to access themselves, so we put up these corrugated iron structures as a measure while the case was ongoing, and the Youth League tore them down so that the walls would stay away and the DA would continue to be a government of toilets without walls. But I reiterate, we built the national standard of 5 families to 1 toilet, as every other in-situ upgrade in the country is supposed to build, and it doesn't always happen. But we never expected any member of the Makaza community to use a toilet without a wall. It was a deeply unfortunate, unintended consequence which we tried to deal with, and to this day, the Youth League is blocking our attempts to deal with that matter.
But are you able to say, unequivocally, are you able to say, as Professor Habib asked, that you are sensitive to the interests of the poor, to the needs of the poor?
You see, we are. And what's the great tragedy about Makaza is now we have officials in the city of Cape Town who are scared to engage in consultation with communities, lest they be accused of being anti-poor, of not understanding the feelings of the poor. My argument is that yes, we are, and we do it through official channels. We sit, we engage, we have consultative meetings, we meet with community fora, with community leaders from all backgrounds, from all political parties, in order to find ways to increase the allocation that we are obliged to give by national government, which is why we have the highest basic service allocations like water, sanitation, electricity in the country. The Minister of Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs has put out a report clarifying this fact. We're not perfect. We haven't reached 100% in all the areas that we want to. We're at 97 and 98%, and we continue to work. But our aim in all that we do is to focus on where we are needed and then to support those areas which are running efficiently and well but need a little bit of government intervention. What we don't do is differentiate between groups of people and say, you're worthless because you're middle class. We're going to only focus on one area where you are morally superior because you are rich or because you are... No. We focus on delivering to all people. All people. And the records show that we are doing a better job in government than the ANC has done.
Thank you very much. Now, to the IFP, we are going to give the parties a chance to interrogate each other and perhaps question some of the statements that have been made here. But let's come to the IFP. 27 councils in 2006, if I'm not mistaken. Or was it 25?
We are running 32.
Now?
Yes.
Well, that's after all the movement.
61.
But you've heard what Professor Habib said, that given that you've been losing support throughout, don't you think that perhaps this is a demonstration by South Africans that in fact you don't deserve their vote? What do you read in the decline in the support of the IFP?
Well, of course, I mean, obituaries of the IFP have been written many a times. You'll remember that in the first democratic elections in 1994, we were given about 0.1%, and we matched with over 10% votes. In the last elections, we were going to be wiped out, and we remain a formidable opposition in KZN, although we lost the province. And all we are saying, the reason why South Africans should continue having faith in the IFP leadership is that, one, we are providing formidable moral constructive opposition in this country. If we were not providing that, you would not have Umsunduzi, the capital of KZN, councillors of the ANC being exposed and being expelled by the ANC. It was the IFP's work that did that. Secondly, the issue of your rural development. It has become the agenda of the ruling party and the government because of the IFP's insistence that you don't look only at urban areas and have urban-friendly policies only and not look at rural areas. Therefore, South Africans have those who have faith, because we've got 800,000 South Africans who still believe in the IFP, and we think those 800,000 voters, we are not going to let them down. We are going to make sure. That is why, if you look at the IFP, you must commend the IFP's survival, because of all parties that were there, it is only the IFP that survived, and we are competing with your ANC giants funded by ESCOM and others, and your DA funded by white business. And we are only surviving on the pittance that we have.
Thank you very much. Now, very briefly, I'm going to give each party a minute to basically talk about some of the issues that have been raised by the other party.
I want to deal with only two issues. I think this approach of the DA, people are equal, they must be treated the same, is actually a myth, because it says where there is poverty, you must not put extra effort to improve the situation there, because people are equal. The approach of the ANC, the approach of the ANC is that where there is poverty, invest more without taking away from the rich. But you must intervene at the poor level. Let me give you an example. In the Western Cape, for example.
15 seconds.
In the Western Cape, the DA government in the province cannot acknowledge any performance of other parties. One of the best performing municipalities in the Western Cape is Bito. It's run by the ANC. Clean audit, 3 years.
Thank you. Let's hold it right there. You heard what Ms. Mandasha
I
said.
said this earlier, so I'm going to say it again. I said this earlier, so I'm going to say it again. We believe the poor deserve more access to government assistance because they are not to be expected to help themselves under circumstances where history has deliberately impoverished and deliberately disadvantaged the poor people of this country. What we are arguing, unlike Mr. Mandashe was arguing, is that we don't, as a consequence of that extra work, ignore the rest of the country. Our approach is to also pay attention to the cities and to pay attention to billing and water provision, because we want to attract businesses and attract investment in order to create jobs so that more people will move out of poverty and into prosperity. That's how you do it. You deal with both issues. You don't just focus on one side and ignore the other and claim that elites don't deserve government assistance. They do, but not as much as the poor do, which is why we focus more on the poor. On the question of the Western Cape, look, I mean, the ANC, where it has governed in the Western Cape, where there has not been a corruption scandal or a scandal involving city managers begging tenderers for bribes, using municipal letterheads and using their positions in government office, breaking the law just to make money for the ANC. I don't think that Mr. Mandashe can argue that the Western Cape, the ANC has a better record.
Very briefly.
Yes, I would say, on the issue of redressing the imbalances of the past, we are in agreement with the ANC. The only difference is the how part of it. Because as IFP, we believe people have answers of their own. We cannot impose solutions from above. That's one, I think, problem that needs to be dealt with. The structural setup of our municipalities is such that they are only conveyor belts of national policy without coming with local solutions on the ground. And secondly...
And this presumably is what the IFP has done in the municipalities that it has been controlling.
Exactly.
Now, before we go on a commercial break, I just want to give a number for those who are sitting at home, who are on the net, those who want to communicate, want to join this debate, which is becoming very lively. The SMS number is 33726. I'll repeat that number, 33726. and SMSs cost 150. And those of you who want to email us, elections@sabc.co.za. elections@sabc.co.za. We're going to take a quick commercial break, and when we come back, we debate the state of the municipalities in our country. So don't go away.
Please don't! If bugs had the choice, they wouldn't choose Raid Multi-Insect Killer. Raid Multi-Insect Killer's powerful breakthrough formula kills both flying and crawling insects on contact.
Can we have a revote?
Raid kills bugs dead.
I stay in touch with my body by giving it what it needs. Enriched with natural almond oil, Nivea Rich Nourishing Body Moisturizer's creamy formula keeps my skin feeling soft and smooth. So no matter what I do in my day, I know my skin is cared for. Always. Nivea Body. Simply beautiful skin.
Fascinating combinations make the world more enjoyable. Just like Nestea, a blend of delicious fruit flavors plus tea goodness. Now available in a 1.5-liter bottle for you and your family to enjoy. Nestea. Enjoy the combination.
Hello. Just a second.
In the past 5 years, 114 people have been killed during level crossing accidents. Don't be a victim. Always stop at level crossings. Transnet, in the interest of your safety.
Coca-Cola refreshes every part of you.
Welcome back. We're talking about the state of local government in South Africa. And we're looking at the performance of the three parties that have been in control and in charge of municipalities across the country. Now, Professor Habib, you heard what the parties had to say about one another. You heard what the people had to say about the parties, what's going wrong, and what they think is going right. Now, for voters who are sitting at home watching this program and saying, what is the point of all of this? What do we say? What do we want them to get out of the parties that are seated here today?
Well, I think that the representative of the ANC, the General Secretary of the ANC, has to still answer the question that the real people who suffer from capacity constraints, from corruption, are the poor. Because the rich can afford to get out of it. They can afford to buy services elsewhere. It's the poor that can't. And that is why when a municipality like the Mzunduzi municipality, which is under the ANC control, I was there a couple of weeks ago. Why is it that it has to completely collapse before action is taken? You can have the best rules in the world, I promise you. You'll never get it to work as long as you don't go after people and make people pay if they're involved in corruption. The billing crisis, it's not about whether we should pronounce guilt or not. It's about why isn't there an investigation into the matter? Why isn't there somebody paying? Why isn't there somebody explaining? What is the crisis? And somebody's head rolling for having caused this thing. It seems to me that that is what people are going to be looking at. To the DA, I must say, this is the most coherent explanation I've ever heard about the toilet saga. Why did it take so long for a coherent explanation to be made in this regard? But the question that still remains is, you heard what the esteemed representative of the IFP said. He suggested that you may be funded, he said, to the ANC by ESCOM, and to the DA it said, white business. Why? Why the suggestion white business? Is there a broader view in the society that you represent elite interests? Why do you not think poor people in the rest of the country vote for you? Why don't you think that? Why only 7 municipalities? Why, maybe 8 now, maybe 10. But why is it that you have so much fewer municipalities? Why do poor people not vote for you? What do you think is the reason? And then finally, to the IFP, you're a regional party. You're 800,000 people, most of them are in KwaZulu-Natal. Why should people vote for you in other parts of the country? Tell me that, because if you're in Limpopo, if you're in the Western Cape, if you're in Gauteng, why should people vote for you? What is it that you can do that the DA and the ANC can't do?
Now, let's get the parties to respond, but I wouldn't want Mr. Mandashi to go back to the billing system in Johannesburg. But I want you to answer, I think, what I think is the fundamental question.
Yes.
Why aren't heads rolling when something goes wrong and it's within the capacity of the politicians and the officials that are supposed to do their job?
No. Actually, that is the weakness of analysts when they don't have facts. Sunduzi changed the whole top brass last year and put new, which is beginning to attend to the problem of Sunduzi. If Professor Habib come here and say, why is there no action taken on Sunduzi, I will know that it's an analyst who doesn't have information. That from the mayor to the speaker, everybody was changed in Sunduzi, because the reason that KZN provincial government said Sunduzi is not ready to be a metro is because they appreciated the depth of the problem and they changed the leadership in that municipality. So action did take place. Heads did roll. Now let's come to the Johannesburg one. Again, the question is, why is there no investigation? The reason that there is what the newspapers describe as U-turn on the statement of Mayor Masondo. It's not a U-turn. Is the actually what comes out of the initial investigation. And therefore, when you get the results of your initial investigation, you change your statement and you begin to say, these are the real problems. That's why we can easily point to the fact that when they changed from one system to the other, there were massive problems that emerged out of changing from one system to another system. Both systems, world-class systems. And therefore, the investigation that will translate into rolling off the heads. You don't start by rolling off heads. You start by investigating, getting your facts, then heads roll. That's how you work. Otherwise, you become unfair. You act on the basis of expediency.
To the DA, you represent elite
Professor
interests.
Habib's question about the perception of the DA being elitist or being white, we mustn't forget that the DA is a political party that has its roots in the Progressive Party. When Helen Suzman was alone in the apartheid legislature, the only opposition MP, our roots in terms of opposing apartheid come from within the system, not without. So historically it was a party with white members, but that is changing. And it doesn't happen overnight, because we have a very difficult divided past in this country, and it's difficult for people of different races to learn to trust one another. But even as that is the case, the DA is still the most diverse political party in this country. More so than the ANC, more so than the IFP, more so than COPE, any other political party. There are independent studies that have proved that. But we don't believe that's enough. We still want to improve on that, because we want to be a party that can represent the hopes, the dreams, the needs of all South Africa's people. And that's why we're engaged in things like talking to the opposition so we can close down the space of debating each other when we should be taking on the party of government, the ANC. This is the reason that we are growing our own timber. We have young leaders programs. We have vibrant branches on university campuses all over the country, from Mangosuthu to Inumlazi to Wits to this campus here. We are growing every single day in every community. And that is our goal, to grow organically and slowly so that our change and our transformation is real and authentic and not just to paper over perceived problems about the party. And that's going to take time. It'll happen as slowly as necessary, but as fast as possible as well.
To the IFP, why are you finding it so difficult to go into other provinces?
Yes, I think the IFP should be honest with South Africans and to voters. That yes, we've been experiencing decline. I've said one of the reasons. And yes, the IFP for the last 2.5 years is going through a soul-searching exercise. That is why it has also resulted in splitter parties for people who have got misplaced ambitions. But why should a voter in Gauteng and a voter in Limpopo vote for the IFP? We are saying the benefits are that they will have a moral, responsible, and constructive opposition as they see real democracy taking place in KwaZulu-Natal. And they'll see it happening even here in Gauteng. Forget the numbers, but look at the constructive opposition that the IFP provides. As we say that we believe in engaging on real issues for the poor, because one of the things that really compromises service delivery and capacity in municipalities, it's not that we don't have capacity, but it is the cadre deployment policy of the ANC, where you just put a person because it belongs to Camp A within the ANC, not because they are capable of dealing with issues. Soweto, for instance, we agree. When I was born in Soweto, there were no tarred roads. It was just the state of Soweto. They are all tarred today. But why that development gets to the gate of areas which are perceived to be supporting Party A or Party B, like Hostel, where there is non-service delivery?
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Gami. Now, we are going to give an opportunity to one member of each of the parties that are here to pose a question to our panel here, including our analyst. The IFP?
My name is Millicent SABC. My question is directed to the IFP. So, Honorable Dlamini, for the current morals we have at the moment about the local government elections, does the IFP engage itself in public participation, whereby it involves the MPs and MPLs to improve service delivery, especially in KZN? Thank you.
Thank you very much. That was a question from the IFP to the IFP. Can we get a question from the DA?
My name is Patricia Rasidingwani. I want to ask Lindiwe from the DA. Well, I've got two questions for you. My question is, what will the DA do to ensure that there is transparency in how the money is spent about this government? Number two is saying, how will the DA...
One question, please. Okay. You said one question. Can we get a question from the ANC?
No, one of the AFP.
My name is Amakambi. I've got a question for SG. To say, during the manifesto and during the State of the Nation address, you mentioned the fact that there is going to be a 9 billion job fund which is going to be created. I just want to explain to us how that is going to impact on the young people on this country. Thank you.
Now, before we get the parties to respond to the questions, quite interesting that members of the audience are asking their own leaders. One would have thought that there are forums where people get to ask questions from their own leaders. But anyway, let me read you some of the SMSs that we've already received. First one, why when there is an election does the ANC government all of a sudden deliver faster services? Second SMS, we are tired of seeing things when it's time to vote. I personally won't vote because we are still suffering, staying without water for 3 months. It's unjustifiable. Third SMS, go DA, go. Thank you for giving me a reason to vote in this municipal election. Proudly DA. Fourth SMS, what is the DA doing to eradicate racism in the Western Cape? And why is it that they always make a noise about corruption when black people are involved, whereas they are silent when it's white people who are involved? Now, I'm going to give each party a minute to respond to the things that have been raised both in the SMSs and in the questions that came from the floor. Mr. Mandasha.
Let me start with cadre development by the IFP first. I don't think the IFP must throw stones when they are in class houses. When their president was the Minister of Home Affairs, he stuck with Ambrosini until death because they believe on the trusted to work with them. He didn't want Billy Masatla, he didn't want anybody. So he must not talk about cadre development as an ANC manifestation. The 9 billion rand and the young people. The 9 billion rand, the 10 billion rand by ITC, the 20 billion rand tax break, all those are monies that are meant to be incentive for people to be employed and for the private sector to create economic capacity so that they can employ more people. Young people will receive a particular focus. We talked of a subsidy or the youth subsidy, which everybody jumped, but we think it's an attractive idea to subsidize employment of young people.
The time is up, Mr.
Why deliver faster during elections? I want
1 minute.
To answer the question about transparency in government, we've recently signed into law a piece of legislation in the Western Cape where we govern that makes it illegal to tender for government business if you are a public representative, if you're an official, if you're the family member of an official, if you're an immediate cousin, whatever. You cannot tender for government business if you have any ties to the government now in the Western Cape. That is the way we're going to tackle transparency and accountability and deal with the matter of corruption. And we challenge the ANC to pass the same legislation in all the other provinces where it governs. It took us less than a year to get it done. The ANC can do the same. On the question of racism in the Western Cape suffers racism like every other province in this country suffers from racism. It existed when the ANC was in government. It exists when any political party is in government. South Africa suffers the brunt of apartheid in every single community, every single part of this country. And we want to tackle it by building a society where everybody has equal opportunity to access prosperity, so that if you're from a poor school and you wouldn't ordinarily have been able to access a good education, you can and improve your life.
Can we get the IFP, please?
Yes, the question about public participation and public representative of the IFP engaging communities. You know that the IFP introduced what is called a signing a pledge between the party and councillors and also members of parliament. It's one of the tools that the IFP is using to gauge the work that councillors are doing on the ground. That is why we're also making a proposal in the Department of Corporate Governance to say we need to capacitate your local councillors, especially your ward councillors, because they are at the mercy of officials in terms of service delivery. They are only there as politicians and making policy, but at the hardcore of real delivery and dealing with issues on the ground, they are not capacitated. Therefore, government should really look at how do we capacitate your councillors so they are able, because they are at the cold front of service delivery. That's point one. Point two, now the IFP, yes, it is embarking, my sister, on a public participation program which started last year, where your IFP MPs and councillors are engaging communities on getting their answers, so that we are then able to have a manifesto that it is as a result of participation and involvement by the communities.
Thank you very much. Now we're going to take another quick commercial break, but before we do that, I just want to remind viewers at home that SMS number 33726, 33726. SMSs are charged at 150, and those who want to email us, it's elections@sabc.co.za. Elections@sabc.co.za. We will be back in a moment.
This graph indicates the situation as it stands. As you can see, we need solutions, and we need them fast. Has anyone got any great ideas?
Actually, I do.
New Barocca Boost. A kick when you need it.
Yay! Finish!
Did you paint between the door?
Why?
If you miss a single spot, that's where it starts to
What? That's what my dentist said about my teeth.
Most cavities happen in places where your brush can't reach. But Colgate with liquid calcium and fluoride gets between teeth and spreads all around for maximum cavity protection.
Look, Dad. I protected the door from cavity.
just like
Colgate!
Colgate with liquid calcium for maximum cavity protection. The #1 brand recommended by dentists.
It's a 2-day price blitz. Get 410-gram Boxer Best Baked Beans for $2.99 only at Boxer Superstores. Hurry in!
Budget Insurance offers you more cover for less. Choose smart and insure your VW Polo Player 1.6 for around 343 Rand a month. Or call now and pay around 356 Rand a month to insure your Toyota Corolla 1.4i. So, make the smart choice. For low car, home and business insurance premiums, SMS budget to 40321. That's budget to 40321 and we'll call you back.
Now there's a way to keep all this fragrance in my family's clothes for up to 2 months. Stay Soft, the only fabric softener now with revolutionary fragrance microcapsules that remain on fabrics and are released with a simple touch, so that they continue to smell great for up to 2 months. Now with revolutionary fragrance microcapsules that last up to 2 months. Stay soft, soft as a mother's love.
Welcome back to this, our last segment in the debate we're having tonight about the state of local government in South Africa. Professor Habib, we're coming to the end of this program. I don't know if we're able to say voters are any clearer about the issues that appeal most to them. And top on their list, if we listen to what people were saying here and the insert we played earlier. Service delivery, service delivery, service delivery. And of course, often the issue of corruption and maladministration comes up.
Absolutely. I think
what would you say to these parties if you had to advise them on a way forward?
I do think that there's a couple of things that there is some degree of agreement on. First, I think people already recognize that municipalities must be responsive to all the population, but they must be even more responsive to the poor. They must invest even more to the poor. I think that's an agreement to that. I think we know that people are suffering, and they're suffering because of service delivery problems. We heard that there in the insert. We've seen enough social protests in this country, service delivery protests, to know that people are hurting and they're dying for assistance. The big question that we have to pose is that's the singular most important thing that these parties have to to focus on. And I will say one other thing, is our skills are developing in the society. Greta Mandasha is right. The fact that we've had 15 years of black people in public service, they've developed experience. The universities produce thousands and thousands of graduates. This university you at here produces 11,000 graduates a year. 70 to 80% of them are black. The question is it not now time to say cadre deployment has to stop? That what we need to do is be based on merit. We have got the skills. Yes to demographic representativity. I respect that. I think that's important. But the more you go for cadre deployment, the more you go away from merit and the more you have the challenge that emerges around service delivery. And it seems to me that that's the fundamental big question that all parties need to address. We don't get service delivery right, we have done nothing for the poor in this country.
I actually think it's a valid question to all of you, because since we started, I haven't heard any of the parties basically saying, for example, the DA saying, this is what we have done better than the ANC. Or the IFP saying, with the 25 councils that we had, this is what we did different from what the ANC did. But also the ANC to say, all the things that we've been criticized for, this, generally speaking, are the things that we've done which show consistency, which show commitment to what the issues that people are raising. Can I give each one of you an opportunity to respond?
The performance, Vuyo, sometimes is something that is, when it is not done scientifically, something that is almost a perception. You see, there was a question that was raised here, why do we deliver faster during elections? We must deliver faster at any point when there are pressure points, whether it is election or the World Cup or the energy crisis. And when we move fast and respond to pressure points, that cannot be a source of criticism. It should be credit. Number two, and the ANC, I can say that the ANC is quite responsive. That's why in my opening statement, I make the point that says, even when there are violent protest action, the ANC physically go to those communities because it is responsive. It is the most responsive party in the country. The third point that I want to emphasize is this. Maybe Professor Abibu must have a longer session talking about catered deployment, because I think there is a lot of smoke and scream around this thing of catered development, as if even when there must be a junior engineer employed, it's catered development, whether there's a cleaner, it's catered development. Catered development is at the top end, is when you appoint a DG. Two things that you look into there is skill and confidence between the management and the political party, so that there is no contradiction at that level that delay performance.
Thank you, Mr. Mandasha.
I did allude earlier to how the DA had delivered better, and I will repeat it if I must. We have the highest basic service allocation in our municipalities than any other municipality in the country. We receive clean audit reports every year. Since 2006, when we took over in Cape Town and in the Eastern Cape, we have received a clean sweep of audit reports. Your own Minister of COGTA gave us the information himself. We have time and again demonstrated that we're a more competent and we're a more efficient government than the ANC. We're not perfect, we are learning, but unlike in 2006 when we were campaigning, we now have a record upon which to base our claims. People can look to statistics, they can look to results, they can look around them and see and compare Cape Town to Johannesburg or Nelson Mandela or Tshwane and see for themselves what it is the DA is doing differently. It's becoming clearer and clearer every day.
Thank you. Thank you.
I think the IFP, it's known for not mincing its words when it comes to corruption. We deal with corruption. That is what we do best in this country compared to other parts. We deal with corruption. We deal with corrupt officials. We don't mince words to fire them. That is why we're even now called a firing party, but we do deal with that because we really care about the pittance of budgets that we get for people to service them. But lastly, Chair, access to government services, either clean water, and all other services, electricity and so forth, it's a constitutional right of every citizen. And the day that sinks within our political parties, and more especially the ruling party and all of us, that access to government services is a constitutional right of every citizen. Therefore, government should not work selectively, but government must operate like God, because the rain falls for everyone, even those who don't believe in God.
Thank you very much. Professor Habib, I'd like to give you 1 minute to sum it all up and make it clearer, perhaps, to the viewers at home.
Well, I do think that we've heard some things that the party have said. It's been very clear that the Secretary General has made it very clear that cadre deployment is only at DG level. So it shouldn't be happening at municipalities, at the bulk of the levels. Clearly, what I'd like to see from the DA is not simply saying we've got better audits, but to say, what are you going to do differently if Johannesburg voted for you? What would you do differently in Mzimduzi? What would you do differently in all of these other municipalities? That would be different. That's what we need to hear, because ultimately, if we don't get things working at the municipal level, we're never going to be able to deliver on our constitutional obligations that we are all committed to.
Thank you very much, Prof. Well, Mr. Gwede Mandasha, Ms. Lindiwe Mazibuko, Mr. Dlamini, Professor Habib, and to this wonderful audience here tonight, to the viewers at home, we're saying thank you very much for being part of this debate. It's our first. We're doing it again next week, same time, same place. We'll be in KwaZulu-Natal, where we talk free and fair elections as well as political tolerance. See you next week. Thank you all.
Tomorrow at 8. Dinner was surprised by an unexpected visit from Paul in Generations. Bese ke ngo8:30, take another look at Mzansi lifestyle of Ekasi portrayed in Zone 14. Bese ke ngo10, our legal wizards are out to save the life of a 14-year-old boy in our drama series, Outlaw. SABC 1, Mzansi for sure.